Well, hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Ladies and Gents Listen Up. And man, do we have a topic for you today? How are you today, Mr. Carpenter?
I'm doing very, very well, Dr. Liz. And you?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. I'm excited about the topic, but I'm a little bit nervous about this one, man, because guys, we're going to talk about sex versus intimacy today. Ooh wee! But before we do that, let's start off with Grandma's cookie jar. We can never forget Grandma's cookie jar because Grandma's cookie jar is full of wisdom and nuggets. Let's see here today. Hmm.
But did you do that
Deep down.
like that light scribe and find somebody that you do all that yet?
I sure did not. Thank you for the reminder. That's why teamwork makes the dream work, right? Don't forget, you all, like, share, and subscribe. Share this information with somebody else. There's somebody else that want to understand and hear from the male and female perspective. Sex versus intimacy. Let's see what Grandma's cookie jar starts out with. Make love your motto. Oh, wow.
Wow, you sure you didn't set that one up?
I promise I didn't. I pulled it right off the top, but that's what it says. It says, make love your motto. All right, we're going to unpack that one. And then on the other side, it says, you were born to be real, not to be perfect. Ooh. Let's say you were born to be real, not to be perfect. And I think that right there, we have a tendency to, want things to be perfect, right? And in this world, we know that we're imperfect beings, right? We're perfect in our own right, but imperfect beings. So it's kind of something understanding, the communication of sex versus intimacy. So we're gonna bounce the ball in your court, sir. What do you have to give us today on this topic?
Okay, let me first. I'm still around the ring of Grandma's cookie jar because we were born to be real, not perfect. And when you talk about sex and intimacy, definitely we were definitely born to be real and not perfect. So that fits today because when you talk about sex, and the majority of us, I think, can relate to sex first. So I think let's get definitions in play so we know what the boundaries are and the limits are what we're talking about. But when you're talking about sex, you're referring to the sexual biological attributes of humans and males based on a reproduction system, male and female. When you look at it, you go a little further, we're talking about chromosomes and gene expressions, hormone levels, and the autonomy of the reproductive system in humans and in animals. But let's make it a little simpler. Sex provides an opportunity for you to feel close, vulnerable, and very exclusive in special ways. Regular sex boosts your immune system. Uncle Charlie says that sex is good for your health. He's saying this. So,
Okay.
so there's a lot of great benefits. And when you talk about sex, people express themselves differently. And I'm trying to stay within the bounds. So some people see it as touching, stroking, kissing, cuddling, caressing. And it's not just always a sexual penetration or intercourse. It can be a lot more, and it means a lot more to most people.
Right.
Um,
Let's as what you were talking about when you were talking about it, you were naming physical attributes of sex, right? So that's so if we make it simple, so sex is a physical act because everything that you
correct,
named was, physical, the cuddling, massaging, embracing, hugging, holding hands, all of that. That's the physical part of it.
correct.
Okay, so I think we wrapped that up pretty good. Okay.
Okay, now let's talk about intimacy. Now, when you talk about intimacy, you're talking about the invisible connection between two people. Intimacy is that chance to be vulnerable and be committed to each other. Intimacy is intimacy is something that you can show something that's emotional.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's touch. It could be very personal. And normally you and your partner decide what that looks like. What is norm for you too?
Right. Right.
It could be a good text message early in the morning. The gentleman, the male in a relationship could text a beautiful text in the morning, and then when the other party gets it, it has an intimate connection between the two. It's so many ways you can express intimacy.
Mm-hmm. I think what I'm hearing you say though, intimacy is the emotional aspect of it. So when you we talk about the physical attributes, but now we're talking about the emotional, which is really the unseen part. It's like what's going on, and
Yes,
like I guess that
yes,
biochemical reaction that's going on. Because you know
yes,
what, love is like a drug. Because in an article that I read not too long ago, they talked about love being similar to the high of cocaine. And I was thinking, wow, if you think about it that way, that's huge, you know. For so when you say that about sending a text message, that's emotional. That's a that's the way to start your day, right? And I think having that emotional connection, I think that's where sometimes we kind of where we're communicating two different. The men are from Venus and the women are from Mars. I
yes,
think that's what happens sometimes because just that small thing, the text message or the pat on the butt as the person is going by you, or all of these things lead up to that physical act. And I was
yes.
listening to a podcast the other day. I love the Dear Future Wifey podcast with Latarius Whitfield. There's so much education and so much information that is shared there. He talked about it, and I said, "Wow, I'm glad that I watched that." I actually rewatched one last night. He talked about a feather, right? He talked about how when he was married, his wife brought home a feather and she asked him to use this feather on her, right? Rub it on her skin and everything or what have you. And he said the one thing that he now, 7 years later, understands that he did not understand at that time is that she was teaching him what she wanted and what she needed. And he said he sat there begrudgingly, like, oh my gosh, can we just get to, right? And so he said that at this point, he's like, oh my God, I got it. I finally got it. If he had given her what she wanted, he would have gotten what he wanted. But he was just so ready for let's get it on. I mean, it is what it is. He didn't understand the intimacy part of it. And I think that's a piece that we do miss, right? With
Yeah.
communicating to each other what it is that we want.
Normally there, and not normally, but sometimes there can be a disconnect between the two partners. And one partner could want more of the emotional intimacy where the other may want more physical contact. What you have to do is the first thing we say is talk to each other. The first thing you have to talk to each other about the intimacy. And hopefully with that conversation or that working together, you can work it out. Now, if that don't work, the professionals say seek, and this is strange. They say seek a sex therapist. If you want more intimacy in your relationship and it's not happening based on you talking to your partner, they suggest that you see a sex therapist and they can in turn help you work through your intimacy issues in your relationship. Because
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 no. I was going to say that's good because we talked about in some of our previous podcasts. We talked about how important that communication is and how important it is. We changed it from interrogation to investigation, right? That's part of what we don't stop and sit down and talk about. That's one of the things that we need to talk about, and sometimes that is a hard topic, or sometimes we don't sit down and have that conversation, and then we expect for the other person to know what it is that we want, and the other
Yeah,
person can be way off based on their love language, right? We talked about the five languages of love. So if somebody's love language is physical touch, and maybe somebody else's love language is affirmation, and you're not actually communicating that with each other, then you're going to be off, right? You're going to say, I'm communicating, I'm touching this person, and the person is like, I don't want you to touch me. I just want you to say that I did good today, or you appreciate me or something. So it's very, very important that we communicate, and that I think maybe we were taught that it was something shameful or wrong about sex, So it's hard for us to now, or, oh, you're being nasty when you're young or something, instead of us really understanding the healthy, like you just said, it's good for your immune system. It's good for your health, right? Instead of us seeing it in that positive light, then we want to talk about it. But if we see it
Yes.
in the negative light, then it's going to be hard for us to have a communication, have a conversation about it.
Yes. And a lot of times there are people that can't have sex or don't desire sex, but intimacy could be the answer for them, because intimacy can give you those feelings and give you that closeness and that vulnerableness. And intimacy can be a look. It can be a stare across the room. Intimacy could be sitting on the couch having a conversation. It's so much you can do with intimacy, and a lot of people acquire it. A lot of people, that's a major part of it, because when the sex act is physical, it's so physical a lot. Without the emotional connection, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you also have to understand too that, and I think this is what society says, that women are more emotional and men are
Mm-hmm.
more physical. So men can, they can have the physical act of sex, and then, it be a one night stand, and they never, you never talk to that person again or what have you. Where women are receivers. So we're receiving, there was a session in our couples, we had a couples session at church one Sunday, and the pastor was talking about how men are givers and women are receivers, right? And he talked about how, men are giving more of themselves when it's a physical, when it's physical, when it's a physical sexual act. Men are actually imparting part of their spirit. So women, when women go and they part, then now the woman is now still thinking about him. She's still, because she's carrying part of his spirit with her. Now that was one of the things. Why do you think, women sometimes get upset, and the man went on and he's with somebody else, and she's upset and she's tearing up tires and bursting out windows because she still had his spirit, the part of his spirit with her. So I believe, I completely believe myself that sex and intimacy is a spiritual connection between two
Correct.
people.
Correct. Correct.
So I think that's why it's important, and that's why I say that investigation portion, to make that true connection and that true bond. There was that the movie, I believe it was about three chords. I forget the name of it, but it was how, when you truly give yourself to that person, and that person truly gives themselves to you, and that bond happens, it's just almost unbreakable, if you will. But it's that true connection with one another. And one of the other things that he said on that podcast last night that I thought was so impactful is, he talked about, when the two come together, and you get married, and if you're marrying the wrong person, if you're married to the wrong person, and they keep trying to keep it together because you done built this whole life together, but if you haven't come into being who you really are, and they haven't come into being who they really are, then when you come together, that's how people say, oh, we grew apart. But when in essence, maybe you just found out who you truly are.
Right. It's a bad. We call that a bad match. And then
Mm.
do when you have a bad match. Because when you have a bad match and it becomes obvious a bad match, you have to keep both of you whole. You have to work it out in such a way that both of you kept whole, and you can resolve that and move forward. Because your way forward sometimes is not as easy as saying bye bye. Sometimes, because you have incorporated so much of yourself and your property and family. It's so many parts of it. The breakup will have to be, but you have to work through a bad match. You
Hmm.
go forward. All right. But let's get back to the intimacy and the sex. Intimacy is a powerful thing. Intimacy is so powerful. And I read a study. I read a study that said that intimacy is so needed in that relationship between men and women, that if a man don't have intimacy over a long period of time, they become angry. And
Mm.
if a woman don't have the intimacy she need over in a period of time, she becomes depressed.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times, if you have friends or you have someone, a partner you know, or somebody, a lady that you might know, and she have problems getting out of the bed in the morning, that she loses her self drive and all of this. A lot of times, it's because she's not getting the intimacy in her life that she requires and needs, and it shows itself out. And some guys, when they fly off the handle very much with their significant other, there's a study that proved that that's a large part of it, because intimacy regulates a lot of your happy hormones,
Hmm.
testosterone, estrogen. Is so much that study brought out about the what intimacy plays in our lives. Because think about it, if you invest your life and your time in someone, what are the little cues and the little things that keep that relationship going? Because let's face it, you can only have so much sex. How do you keep that going? And especially, let's say that you don't have sex, that you're saying, hey, look, for whatever reason you can't or don't want to have it, or you sell it that you don't want to have it. How do you keep that fire? How do you kindle or rekindle those emotions? How do you stay vulnerable and close?
Right. Well,
That's the function of intimacy in our lives.
absolutely, absolutely. But I think it's something that is actually something that you're doing intentionally, right? So that you don't
Correct.
get in a relationship and you get comfortable and you just get comfortable. And it's okay to be somewhat comfortable, but you also want to be intentional. You want to be
Mhm.
intentional with keeping it fresh, intentional with keeping it exciting, keeping it different, keeping, adventure, you know what I'm saying? And then really studying each other, because as you continue to change, you're going to ebb and flow if you're in the right match with somebody, right? So really, really understanding. And I think, again, part of it is doing the work on yourself, making
Yes.
sure that you're bringing your whole self to the relationship. And then when you're
Yes.
able to do that, and if you're bringing your whole self, that means that you bringing your whole healed self. So you're not bringing baggage from another relationship into that relationship. And then when something looks like something that you've experienced, whether it is or whether it's not, you're now acting upon that hurt that you still carry inside. So it's a really good idea that we actually heal our hurt and find out what it is that's going to make us whole. And now we're bringing a whole healthy person to a relationship. And then you can also better identify the red flags instead of, instead of ignoring the red flags, you're now identifying them, and now you're making a decision as to whether this is the person that you want to spend your life with, or maybe it's just not the right person for you. And I think touching in on that, sometimes people feel rejection, or they feel it as rejection when that person, you're just not a good match for each other. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with either party. It just means that you're just not a good match for each other. And I think that's the healthy way to deal with it, and also to deal with it up front versus letting that intimacy and letting all of that start to really weave together. If you do it earlier, like as you're going along, when you see something, don't ignore it and keep going, because eventually when you get to that intimacy and you go into a deeper relationship, then you're gonna have issue down the line because you're not being your true authentic self. I think that's
Right.
that's a part of it all, is being your true authentic self, giving yourself permission to be who you are.
Yes. And for myself, I'm talking about me now. I don't know if now that, because I love intimacy more. I'm more of intimacy than I am making love now, or sex. And I don't know if it's I'm getting older, is that I'm getting more mature, or I understand the value of a partner now. But to me now, the intimacy is the key. That's the big key now, because as you grow closer and you have that connection, that visible connection between each other, it really helps, because I can feel the other even when you're not there. So,
Hmm.
when you want to get home early, because I want to beat you home so I can prepare dinner or do something like that for you. All of those things are important now, where before I would try to beat you home so I could get dressed, take my shower and be ready. But now it's now of a more of a connectedness. Now, I think there's six. Let me pull this down here. I got six. There are six things about intimacy. There are six steps of achieving intimacy, and I want to go through this right quick if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
The first thing, and some of this we covered when we were doing some of our previous podcasts, and we were talking about the things that's important in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
One of the six ways of creating intimacy, the first is be honest. That's the very first one. Be honest. Trust is the bedrock of intimacy. The second thing is strive for a mutual, considerate communication, that you can communicate. And these are the same things, some of the same things that the relationship, these are the main pillars of relationship. And you want to be present when you talk. You want to talk in declarative statements where you don't want to blame the other for stuff. You want to say, hey, look, I would feel better if we did it this way, versus you don't never do it that way. That these kind of things. So that's
Communication.
so that's the way you want to talk. The next is, remember that intimacy takes time. You got to spend time together, and it's built slowly over time, and you get to know each other a lot better. So you have to have that time commitment. So far we're talking about being honest, communication. Now it's a time commitment for number three, time commitment. Number four, you got to give each other room to breathe.
Yeah.
You got to give each one time. You need time alone. All right. Number five, have fun together.
Mm-hmm. Important.
Not every encounter has to be so intensely meaningful or serious.
Right.
Have fun, relax, do some crazy things. Just enjoy yourself. Enjoy the company of the other.
Laughter is medicine, remember?
Yes, that's it. You're correct. And the sixth one, you have to accept your partner for who they are. And this is back to everybody's not perfect.
Yeah.
You can't get close to someone if you're always negative and judging them.
Oh, absolutely. That is so, yes, that is so important. It is important, like you said, how you talk to your partner, right? Because you can, just like if they're wearing something and it's not flattering to them, it is the way that you say it to them. Because
Yes.
you do want, and then when you have that trusting relationship, they know that you have their best interest at heart. So when you're taking time out to properly communicate, to communicate with love, and not what it say, truth without love is brutality. So
Uh-huh.
giving them, speaking to them with love, and all of those things. I think all of those things, those six things that you said, it is so important. But that trust, I had a couple, but they blended right in with what you just said. The loyalty, the romantic love, fidelity. Being somebody knowing that that they can trust you. I think trust is just it, and then you can start to, even if they have a wall up, that wall will start to slowly come down if they know that there's trust there. So yeah,
Yes.
wow. I love this conversation, because I think we had a lot of great nuggets to help people to understand, because some people don't know the difference between sex and
Yes.
intimacy. There is
Yes.
a big difference.
Yes, and let's talk straight difference for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, the difference between sex and intimacy. A lot of times, people want to make that physical act into an intimate act, and that's where they go in a lot of problems, because they think physical sex is intimate. We're being intimate. As a matter of fact, a lot of people just say, "Let's get intimate," meaning let's have sex, but it's not the same. There's a difference. Sex is physical and intimacy is emotional. The emotional bond, the
Yeah.
emotional connection.
Yes, and I think that's the scary part, because a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to
Yeah.
be vulnerable and allow themselves to be vulnerable because they're afraid of being hurt. But that's
Yeah.
going back to, we didn't come out as babies being afraid of being hurt. Babies just all over. Like, my little grandbaby, she's not even walking yet, and she just flips all over the place, just like, oh, somebody's gonna catch me, right? And if we could just go back to that, right? we're forgetting all of the, healing from all of the hurt that we've had. Just go back
Mhm.
to that little baby. We found her under her little chair the other day, and she was just peeking up around the chair like, somebody's gonna come get me. So we can allow ourselves to get back to that vulnerable state, and then allow ourselves, we can really, really establish true intimacy, and then that makes the sex even the more great, right?
Yeah, so let's bring this home. So, in bringing
Okay.
it home is if you feel you need more intimacy in your relationship, talk to your partner. Talk to your partner. A lot of times you don't know what the other person thinking. I was talking to somebody recently and I thought one thing and we were talking. I said, well, hey, I know how you felt by blah, 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 blah. And she said, no, I thought you felt blah, blah, blah. And both of us was thinking wrong stuff.
Absolutely.
Never know unless you have those conversations and talk about that intimate stuff in your relationships because you and your partner determine what's the norm, whether it's sexual or whether it's intimate. What do you really need from your partner? That's the best person to ask. Don't ask your friends. Don't go ask your friends, man, I wonder what she'll do if I do this. That's the wrong
That is
that's the
so good.
that's the
That's so
wrong
good.
place to go. So
Exactly.
that's not. So don't have your girlfriends. Girl, take this home and no, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. Talk to your partner. Talk. Yeah,
Talk.
there's surprise. There's sometimes you can surprise your partner, but if you want more intimacy in your relationship or more sex, whatever it is, talk to your partner first, and then if that don't work, seek outside help from a professional.
Absolutely. And I'm going to end on the point where TD Jake's song, it's a song called Silk Sheets. And in that story, the wife goes out to buy her husband something special and she wants to get him some black silk sheets. And the narration comes in and says that though she wanted to create that beautiful experience for him, if she had asked him, she would have known that he can't stand silk sheets because satin sheets lie.
Oh wow! And see, that you summed it up perfectly.
It's a
You summed it
beautiful,
up.
beautiful, beautiful song, but if we listen to the words, that song hits home. And it brings us right to a close today. I think was a great conversation, and I think we hit a lot of wonderful nuggets on it. I appreciate your time. I thank you so much for all that you bring to our podcast. And we're getting feedback that is helping a lot of people. So guys, we are back, right? Took a little hiatus, but we are back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share this information to somebody else. Listen, learn, leverage the information. Y'all stay fearless. Bye for now.